welcome to Movie RX, where I prescribe entertainment one movie at a time. I am your host, Dr. Benjamin, and I am a doctor in the same way that Dr. Pepper is a doctor. Have you ever had a movie change you, cause self-reflection in a way that made you want to be better? I have. But first, let me introduce my guest host today. I have the guy behind the 86th franchise, where he helps those in the culinary and hospitality professions thrive. Joining me today is Chef. Welcome, Chef.
Hey, what's up? First off, Dr. Pepper, why is Dr. Pepper named Dr. Pepper anyway? I don't actually know.
I'm not entirely sure, but do you remember my old apartment over by... No, you didn't come over to my old apartment over by the campus.
Was it that one?
I had... It was the one that was in the basement.
Oh, the basement.
Yeah, and it had like it was totally like a bachelor pad. Like, it was made for dudes that like to drink. And the wallpaper that was all around the living room was old vintage, like hand-drawn black and yellow, like yellowed paper type advertisements for old, booze and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
So there was Dr. McGillicuddy's, tinctures. And
do you think that's where it came from?
Pretty sure that Dr. Pepper has something to do with a doctor that made some kind of a beverage, because like even Coca-Cola was supposed to be a medicine.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pepsi originally had Pepsid in it, and so it was. Yeah. So that makes sense. That actually makes sense.
Right. And then they start carbonating things and making them better, and well, I don't know about better, but something. So yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look that up, and if we do another one, remind me. I will. I'll set the record straight on it.
So are we
now today?
Oh, sorry,
no, you're good.
I was just going to ask if we're doing if we're talking about the old Ninja Turtle movie or the 2014 one, or both of them, or.
Today we're going to talk about as it was originally released, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. Okay.
We'll just pretend that 2014 never happened.
At least for right now, or maybe. I mean, I think of all of them, 2020 is the one that we want to forget most. But I don't know that there was a turtle movie at that time. Let's see. So I'm just going to kind of run through some basic info on this film. It was released in 1990. It was written by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Those are the original creators for the comic book, along with a guy named Bobby Herbeck. I don't know much about him. This movie was also directed by Steve Barron. Now, something that you'll notice about Steve Barron is that you don't recognize his name. It's because he's not really a movie director. he's a music video director. I mean, he did do. I mean, I know he did Coneheads in 1993.
Yeah.
But other than that, most of his cited works are ZZ Top and David Bowie music videos. So,
let me. Can I ask you a question though? When the original movie came out, what was the catalyst? Because comic book movies weren't too much of it. Like that, you had some Spider-Mans and stuff, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wasn't really that well known.
So this movie, being released in 1990, kind of came out at the perfect time. All of the things from the whole Ninja Turtle franchise. It started with the comic book that had gained a lot of traction with comic book fans very quickly. And then that caught the attention of a toy maker, and the toy maker, started producing toys. Those weren't selling really well, and so they did a very typical late 80s tactic. And we have all of these toys that we want to sell, so we're going to make a cartoon. Well, with the cartoon, they weren't going to be able to use the source material much for the cartoon, because the comic book was so dark.
Right.
So then they lightened it up. Yeah. And then they just made it goofy. So then that's kind of where the Ninja Turtles that we know of today came from. And then after the cartoon, then everything is selling. The comic books, um the toys, the t-shirts, the shoes, the kids all have watches with their favorite Ninja Turtle face on them. Do you remember shoelace clasps?
I actually don't remember those. I did have some Ninja Turtles toys, but they were like actual action figures. I didn't have any of like the kind of accessories that came with it.
See, and these things were everywhere. But of course, Ninja Turtles had their own variation. It was just a little thing that like you'd tie your shoes and then you'd like it was this rubber thing that you'd clip around the bow, and then it was supposed to keep your shoes tight. It didn't ever do it for mine. But they had everything except a movie. Somebody said, "Okay, well, I'm going to make a movie." In kind of an absurd move, they decided on live action. When you think about turtles in a live action film, Ninja Turtles, like who goes, I want to make turtles in real life and have them do kung fu. That's kind of a crazy feat, when you really think about it. Kind of one of the coolest things about this movie that I didn't really realize. Did you know this was an independent film?
I heard it was an independent film, but I don't remember. I didn't remember a lot of the details.
This movie was a very, very, very successful independent film. It held the record for the highest grossing independent film from 1990 until 1999.
See, I do remember that. I remember it's just smashed. Like
Yeah,
everybody, it was like the thing from the '90s that everybody was talking about.
it
What?
was
So what beat out Ninja
huge.
Turtles?
It was Blair Witch Project.
Oh yeah, and well, in Blair Witch Project, that was what, like 38 grand, I think, something, or 83 grand. Like it was less than 100,000. I remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't very much. And actually, if I remember right, I think their budgets were actually pretty close to the same, a decade apart. But I'm pretty sure their budget was pretty close to
Yeah,
the same
dude,
on both of those.
I was like, I had always been I loved Ninja Turtles. I'd always been fascinated with the movie. And one of the things I just recently saw, because our phones spy on us, so they knew that the Ninja Turtles thing was coming up, and I started getting Ninja Turtles content on TikTok. And one of them was them showing the behind the scenes of people of them like wearing the suits, and like they hire like these professional like kung fu people are like having to learn how to do kung fu. Uh, it was kung fu, right? It wasn't. Do you know what form they used, or was it a mixture?
Um, I think it was either ninjutsu or toshindo.
One of those.
Yeah, I mean,
Toshindo's brutal, man. I was at
yeah.
Toshindo for a while, and it is.
Could you imagine doing toshindo in a foam rubber suit?
Dude, no.
That would suck.
Well, and
Just
they actually had to invent certain moves because the turtle shell being round, there were certain things that they were able to then do, like rolling on the ground and stuff like that, and utilizing like what how a turtle would utilize its body parts if it were a big muscly mutant.
right. See, and those are some of the things that you never really think about is God, how would that have changed the way that somebody would have to act? Of course, the people inside the suits weren't actors. Well, I mean, I guess they kind of were. Um, I don't know if you knew this or not, but 3 of the guys inside the suits are in the movie,
Yeah.
and 2 of them are
One
interacting
of them
with
was
the
I
turtle
remember
that they're
one of them
inside
was
of.
Donatello.
Donatello actually didn't interact with himself in the
There
movie.
was
He did with April.
I can't remember one of the turtles. There was this scene where somebody rolled over a car or something, and one
Yeah,
of the turtles was actually inside the car when it happened.
right. So Raphael rolled over the hood of a taxi, and the guy in the back seat was like, "What the heck was that?" And the
Was that
driver was like,
Raphael?
"Yeah." Well, the guy in the back seat was Raphael, so he interacted with himself, you know, after the fact.
So meta.
Um, you remember at the very beginning of the movie, the delivery guy when he's like, "All right, 122 and an eighth, 122 and an eighth," and then he's like, "You're standing on it, dude," and then he's like passing money and pizza through the grate in the street. You remember that?
Oh, dude, it's been so long since I've seen that. I should have watched it again before going live.
Well, that is Michelangelo selling Michelangelo a pizza.
Did they just do it to be goofy, or was it just
I,
like they just needed
I'm not
for that part, so they're like, ah, go do that.
I'm not really sure why they did it. But I mean, it's kind of neat when you like watch it. You're just like, that's really funny. The Donatello one wasn't quite so nifty because with this one, I'm pretty sure that the guy that was in the Donatello suit, um, I'm pretty sure it was just just a white guy. But he was one of the foot soldiers in the subway that jumped April O'Neil.
Yeah,
Yeah, the guy's name is Leaf Tilden. So,
Leaf Tilt.
yeah, yeah, just a pretty average, normal, regular white guy. And he was in the suit for Donatello, but on the subway, he was the guy that was delivering April O'Neil the message. When he's
Oh,
like,
okay.
when it was the really awful, stereotypical Asian, "I bring to you a message, Miss O'Neill," like just really, really bad.
Like stuff you couldn't get away with now.
Yeah.
No,
And that was the guy in the Donatello suit. I don't know that the guy in the Leonardo suit
I'm
was
gonna
was
go
actually
ahead.
in anything else.
Oh,
So I guess kind of the next thing I wanted to do was just kind of get your take on the 1990 film. Any likes, dislikes, favorite scenes, favorite quotes, any of those kind of things. What's your take on the movie?
I do remember thinking it was awesome because like I didn't have like a strong, I guess you could say, a strong father figure in my life at the time. So Splinter, like kind of being a father to the turtles, I saw as like, oh, that's really cool. Like relating to like, man, that would be awesome to have something like that. And I'm
Right.
almost wondering. Well, I don't know. Did you had any standout moments in that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I kind of feel like their message in that movie was really about family. I mean, a lot of those old movies kind of were. That was a pretty big thing.
Right.
But my take on some of that stuff with them now is I've got some dynamic feelings on it a little bit. They spend all of this time with Splinter making sure to tell them, that they need to rely on each other, that they need to look out for each other and stay together, and all of these things. Um, Danny, the April's boss's kid,
Yeah.
the redhead, he didn't have a good relationship with his dad, and so that kind of created some moments there. All of these kids that were doing all of these things that they're not supposed to. I mean, granted, now it's like, a kid playing a guitar with Liberty spikes on his head doesn't mean he's a bad kid now.
Right.
back when this movie was made, oh my god, what is that kid doing?
Well,
Um,
just really quick, what I found interesting about it, and I actually saw something on Facebook that showed up, and I ended up sharing it. But you ever notice how it's always in the '90s, the bully was always seen as like Liberty Spike kid with the leather jacket and the chain wallet and the torn pants and stuff like that. But
and the waffle stomper boots.
yeah, but what's weird about it is it was usually like the snobby rich kids with the sweater tied around, like they were like those were the real bullies. Like,
Right.
the punk kids, they just wanted to, they kind of had this fuck you attitude because they got sick of people's shit. And it was always the rich ones that felt like they were so entitled to everything that would bully.
Right. In 1990, they did a whole lot of playing into that image.
Yeah.
That image was what made you good or bad, and a lot of the time they would
I
overlook
didn't
those kind of things.
I didn't even think about
Um,
that because the other thing about the turtles is like he was always like, you guys need to stay in the sewer, basically, like you can't leave. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it was protection, but he was also like, Splinter was also worried about like how the turtles would be seen if they just walked around in public. I do gotta say though, I think it's hilarious that when they do go to the surface, they put on like, a coat and a hat, and
A,
people
a
are like,
trench
"Oh,
coat,
you're a human. You
a
must be a
trench
human."
coat, and a fedora.
It's like, bro, what's wrong
Yeah.
with your face?
Do you remember how they rectified that in the cartoon?
Uh,
How they had them all wearing those weird masks that made them all look exactly the same, and they had these giant butt chins and wrinkly foreheads, and yeah, it was awful. A lot of those things, like those kids that were in that warehouse the whole time, that were, they were looking for they were looking for cigarettes, and they were opening boxes of things that were stolen by foot soldiers, and categorizing them and putting them places so that they could be sold and stuff like that. Which, by the way, do you know who Sam Rockwell is? He
uh,
was in that movie called Moon, Cowboys and Aliens.
oh
He
yeah,
was he was
I was shocked. I was shocked at Cowboys and Aliens and how it worked out. Like, I
Me
thought
too.
that was gonna be the worst movie. I was like, Cowboys and Aliens, like the most gimmicky thing, and then they did it, and I was like,
And
that
then they
actually
made a
wasn't
movie.
bad.
Yeah, they they took something that was like, seriously, like,
Right,
are you even trying anymore? And then you watch it and it's a movie. It's a
right.
Western movie. Like,
Um,
crazy, crazy shit.
again. Um,
But he played Doc in that, who, like, despite his name being Doc,
mhm.
he's a doctor, but he's not a doctor for where he is. He was the bar owner. But he was actually like the head bad kid at the warehouse.
Okay.
If there's anything you want to do it. It was Sam Rockwell.
Oh, earlier you'd asked about like, I guess things like either memorable quotes or just something that the thing with me is like, granted, it was so long ago that I don't remember a whole lot about the movie. But what I will say is cable TV, video games, and movies were kind of my escapism at the time, because it was like,
Hmm.
it was a rough childhood. But
Yeah.
the movie itself was a way of like kind of getting lost. You get lost in the characters, and now today watching it brings a lot of nostalgia with it. Like a lot of there's songs, like to this day there are songs that play, and they played during like, they were like my ex's favorite song, or they played to some negative part. I don't really have that with movies. Like, I don't see a movie and be like, oh man, that was the movie that I watched when this horrible event happened. You know,
Right.
like I do with songs. But with movies, like it's always like the characters getting lost in the writing, looking at the behind the scenes footage, like all of that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. Like, I just that's probably why I enjoy it the way that I do.
The turtle suits from the 1990 film
Hmm.
still kind of stack up today as far as animatronic, like, puppet suits go. When you watch the turtles in that movie now, then it really doesn't feel as awkward as you'd think it would, with it being, nearly 40 years ago. So you've got all these kids in the warehouse, and then, like, a gong gets hit 4 or 5 times, and then all of the kids go to this giant room, and everybody is up above, and down below a carpet gets rolled out, and out comes Shredder for the first time.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
there's this
introduction.
there's this whole thing where he gives the speech, and he's like, the outside world rejects you. This is your family. I am your father. And he tries to steal Darth Vader's thunder, but he is putting himself in that place of being family to these kids. Danny ends up finding Splinter in the back room. Danny says to Splinter, yeah, well, my dad couldn't care less about me.
Hmm.
And Splinter says, I doubt that that's true. And he asks why, and he said, because all fathers care for their sons.
Right.
And so it feels like there's just more and more emphasis put on family. And then towards the very end, when Casey Jones and Danny are trying to get Splinter out, he calls Tatsu Tinkerbell, smashes him in the face with a golf club, and and Sam Rockwell and all of the kids are getting ready to go beat him up, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "We're a family." And Casey Jones is like, "Family? Did you say family? You mean you call this here and that down there family? Whatever, and then
Right.
they take him out." And at the time, I get it. I get kind of the message that they had and everything. Um, I do kind of take a little bit of issue with it in the modern day, though.
Yeah,
Mostly because Splinter telling a kid that he barely knows, and a kid that he's never met his father, says all fathers care for their sons. I mean, I
sometimes,
mean,
yeah, there's deadbeat dads, and there's
and even deadbeat dads care for their kids a lot of the time if they're going to work and they're paying their child support and they're doing their visits and stuff like that. But like, I mean, in the line of work that I do, sometimes you come across people that are like, no, just terminate my rights. I don't want anything to do with it.
right.
And it's like,
There
I
is some
I don't
bad people.
I don't know if there's any if that has changed, or if people are just more comfortable with showing that side of themselves. Um, if maybe that's something that's changed over time, I don't know. Like, I mean, one of the things that I kind of touted for a long time, up until high school or whatever, was that all of my friends' parents were divorced, and they were together most of my childhood until I got into high school.
Hmm.
And so it was like, for me, the whole aspect of broken homes and struggling families and single moms and stuff like that was just stuff that was around me. That didn't
Right.
affect me. That wasn't
Well,
part of my life.
I mean, that
So, I
is
mean,
something
did that speak anything to you with the family
yeah,
thing?
that's something that I noticed too, is because, like, you know it's interesting because when you're younger and you have, say, a single parent household, or
Mhm,
you have a single mom, and they're trying to date and stuff like that. Like, when you're growing up in kind of, in that universe, in that world, you think it's normal, like,
mhm,
to not have, a dad that's around or whatever. But then when you start seeing, like, oh, you've got both of your parents, like, that's a thing, like, there is a contrast I noticed too with, it's almost like Shredder had a type of, kind of almost like a despot. Like, their approaches are totally different, in that one, like, Splinter represents a lot more like sacrifice. Like, he gave up his life to raise the turtles, and
mhm.
he would give them the world, right? Whereas is Shredder felt more like, I'm going to take this for myself. I'm going to take it all because I want power. I want to, you're going to listen to me, that kind of attitude. And which is, what part of what makes him the antagonist in the first place, is that, you know,
Well, in that same instance, before Casey Jones and Danny took him out, to Sam Rockwell, when he was like, we have an allegiance to the Shredder,
mhm,
you know, he was like, that was Splinter's words to him, were, the Shredder uses you, you
like,
know.
you're a tool to be utilized,
Yeah, like,
literally a
you're
tool.
you mean nothing to him, but what you can do for him. And I mean, and yeah, that's a concern that, especially today, which is kind of where I take issue with the other stuff, is that, their implication is that your family is the ones that you're born into, that your biological brothers and your biological sisters and parents and all of that, those are your family, and that's it.
Right.
And I really take issue with that, because the reason I am here today is because of some of my chosen family at times that I needed them. You know, um, I mean, there was a time where my family was in such kind of turmoil that I don't know that anybody in our family, in our nuclear family, had contact with each other. And and the only thing that I could do to make myself feel like I was safe was to to find a chosen family. Um and so I do kind of take issue with the implication that family is something that you are bestowed upon a birth.
Right.
So um I mean, well, and like you're the closest thing I have to a brother, you know. So it's like I sometimes that can be just as important as any family that you're blood related to.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting too, like there's this presupposition that like if you're born into a family, there's like this automatic undying like unconditional type of love that is there. And that is true in a lot of cases. But there's also a lot of cases where it's pretty much it's not like that. And there's people that you could spend time with and be around the whole time that totally um, you know that there is a level of sacrifice there, and not just sacrifice but also like the bond that can happen, and it can be like brother like. And you see a lot of that in the movie where like like you were saying, like Splinter's not related to the turtles, like.
Mm.
And but there were not a lot of people that would have shown them the same, because humans are nasty, dude. Like if those turtles were found by somebody, like uh, I don't even know like what that would look like if they found like if some rando happened across these four mutant turtles and then like had them as pets or something, and then they started to like mutate and turn into like kids, you know, like they'd be like a sideshow or something. Like it's
They'd
bad.
be a sideshow, or more likely, um well, okay, if it's the
Study.
Midwest, then they're getting buried in the backyard. Like let's just be honest there.
Oh man.
But in New York, like, yeah, totally, they'd be turned into uh some kind of a ticket grab, you know.
Yeah,
um
either circus style thing or like
or wind up in a lab.
yeah, in a lab where they poke and prod. They'd probably be like, "Oh, we have four of them here, so we can afford to dissect one of them," and like, God, that would be such a dark movie, dude.
Yeah, yeah, let's not explore that too much. um God, now I feel bad. I feel icky thinking about it, of how dark that could go. Um,
Sounds like a really bad skit. No, but
right, right.
but that's the cool thing is like sometimes people are in the right time, right place at the right time, and they even though the turtles grew up in the sewer, it because of what we were just talking about, that's actually like one of their best outcomes because they have this bond of this family and this they have a place, they have food, they kick
Yep.
ass like.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. I think that like their intended story was probably really good for the time, but I think that in the long run it kind of falls short of really promoting that nuclear blood family is best. I mean, I've got entirely too many reasons to list today why I don't believe that blood family is best, and some of them I don't even have their permission to share why. So,
What's I didn't even think about this till it showed up in my feed. Um,
mhm.
there was a YouTube video. I can't remember the creator. I'll share it to you after the stream. But in the video, they were trying to answer the question of why the Ninja Turtles couldn't ever like love. I guess not in the literal sense of having feelings, but why the Like there was it was a movie or something, and they introduced a new female turtle, and like
Yeah,
whenever there starts to brew any type of like romantic anything, it's really off-putting and awkward, and it's like the one thing they can't do. Like it
yeah.
just doesn't work. And like I don't know if you have any takes on like
I
why that is.
I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you knew that the female Ninja Turtle was a big part of the reason why Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird split.
Oh really?
Yeah, like they didn't have anything to do with each other pretty much after that because I mean, I think it was I think Laird ended up selling his half to Eastman because he was like, I don't want anything to do with this. Like, I mean, if we're gonna start doing this kind of stuff, I'm not gonna do it.
Right.
And
Next you're
so
gonna tell me they're aliens.
right.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing. No, something in here I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit is uh, as far as movie reviews go for this movie, like, and we're talking on modern platforms here. Um, IMDb has a rating of 6.8 out of 10 stars. Um, Not great.
Yeah.
Um, the Rotten Tomatoes, which, I mean, how I feel about Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I mean, the
Um,
whole rating system for Yelp or Rotten Tomatoes or any of that, like it needs an overhaul. There needs to be
yeah.
some changes made to it.
Well, the tomato meter says, which is, you know, Rotten Tomatoes critics,
Hmm.
um, gave this movie a 42, which is rotten. However, right next to it is the audience score of 81%, which is fresh, very fresh.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean that's a little divisive right there. You know, we've got 42 from official critics, 81% from everybody else. Um, and kind of a little bit above mid-range on IMDb. And I don't know. I feel like that fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles uh could enjoy this movie. I don't know about
Yeah,
younger people. Like, people that are growing up with different creations of the Ninja Turtles, I don't think would really get along with this well.
yeah. I think the animated series tends to do better. Like
Yeah.
the live action stuff. Like I mean, there was the 2014 movies, but at the same time, like it seems like when they do animated releases. Now I have a hard time with them because the animation style is a little off-putting to me, but it's probably just because I'm old, you
Yeah, me
know.
too.
Like it gives me like Dexter's Lab vibes when the show was really good, and then like they changed animators, and then
Yep.
like the dad they just got really like ugly, like cartoony, you know. Like obviously
Yep.
it's a cartoon, but I mean like they exaggerated everything way more, and it was
Even more so than a cartoon can be.
right.
Yeah. No, no, I get it. I understand. Um, I'm right there with you. Like the newest one, of course, I don't know. The newest one seems to be catching a lot of flack, and I'm just like, it's whatever. Like if you don't like it, then don't watch it. But I'm just a Ninja Turtle fan, so I'm gonna watch as many Ninja Turtle things as I can. As long as they keep putting them out.
Right. At
Um,
least give them a shot, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and if you watch it and you don't like it, then don't watch it again. So, um, now, the ratings don't really matter to me, but what does matter to me is that kind of puts me in a place where I'm curious, uh, and we get into the medicinal part.
Mm.
Did this movie change or influence you in any way?
I mean, I can't sit here and say that it didn't. I think the way that this movie and movies like it have influenced me is the when I was younger, the concept of like, the good guys, basically like exploring like the good guys doing good things and um not just saving the day, but also just being good people. And
Hmm.
like also the fact that you can be a good person and still do bad things. Like I said with Raphael, he had this attitude, but at the end of the day, he was still like compelled to do good things.
Hmm.
And I think it's part of the reason why when I grew up, I was always like, and my mom says this too. She's like, if I ever had to go to the office from, getting called because of a fight that you were in, it was because you were defending somebody. Like,
Hmm.
there were these like sped kids, like I was one of them too, so I can say that. I was in sped, but then there were other kids that were in sped that were like um more developmentally challenged than I already was,
Hmm.
and they would get picked on hard, and they wouldn't fight back, and they wouldn't, and it's not their fault. They're not. You shouldn't have to walk around looking over your shoulder all the time, and like you shouldn't have to learn how to fight just to go to school. You know,
Hmm.
and there were several times where I got in someone's face because they were picking on somebody, or I about got into a fight at the high school because one of the rich snobby kids was saying some really, like, I can't even repeat it, like it was some really racist stuff to somebody at the dance. So it's always been like that for me, and I think like Ninja Turtles itself as a franchise is a big reason why like that got instilled in me. Even
Hmm.
if it was just the seed, just the little spark of like, you don't have to be an asshole to everybody. Like you can be a good person and you don't have to let negativity always get you down. Like
Right.
that's what it was for my end anyway.
So Ninja Turtles kind of, especially like Raphael, um, really kind of almost gave you a sense of like righteousness, standing up for what's right.
Yeah.
It's really funny. My version of it also is is a Raphael thing. Um, I honestly, I think that just about any variation of the Ninja Turtles really is just a bigger story about Raphael most of the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Almost like he's
uh,
the underlying.
like he's the hero, and the other guys are just as cool as he is.
Well, and
Like,
what I know we're talking more about like the movie, but like one thing that I think in today's age, a dark Ninja Turtles movie would totally be possible. And like, what's interesting to me is the one of the things that we had talked about previously was Raphael's horrible beginnings when they couldn't find him. And so part of the comic series is them trying to get reunited with their brother who mutated and grew up in a trash pit and doesn't know anything about himself. And, his only friend is, this abused kid in
mhm,
Casey Jones. And I think today it could be pulled off because there's so many grown-ups like you and me that followed the franchise and they know that kind of stuff. And
right.
so you could get away with, like, kind of like what Joker did. Like DC Comics was really the Batman series super dark, you know
Hmm.
like Batman had a horrible tragedy and crime is just rampant and everybody's like psychotic, and it's like just everything's a mess. And
Hmm.
they kind of cartoonified him and turned him into like this kind of lovable anti-hero and whatever. But then Joker comes out, and I know that wasn't with Batman, but the Dark Knight series and Joker, those movies like rolled it back and turned it into we're not doing the hokey comic book pow anymore.
Right.
Now we're dark. Now this is serious. Like things are going to happen. And Batman's a good guy, but you could also look at him as a bad guy in the right light.
Right.
And so I think you could get away with that with the Turtles now. It would probably be something that it probably still wouldn't be as big because the issue there is you would be narrowing the audience. Whereas Ninja Turtles as a franchise right now, it's like their audience is kids and nostalgia. Like that's
Yeah.
it. And that appeals to a huge swath of people. Like I'll still go and watch a Ninja Turtles movie. But
Right.
so, you know, the youngest stepkid, he'll watch it too. And it's a family thing that can bring us together. So I think making it dark would be really interesting to see, but it would also reduce the audience size.
As a grown up,
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see. But
But oh, I
but
got I
yeah.
got way off topic. So what I was trying to say is I was actually agreeing with you with the Raphael thing in that like that kind of like I didn't ask to be born kind of angsty kind of attitude. Uh,
Right.
it's something that people can relate to a lot more. That not everybody's going to be this like, yeah, I'm growing up in the sewer. This is great. My life is awesome. He's kind of like,
Yeah.
screw this place, dude. Like,
You're not the first person. There are a lot of other people who've told me that, probably their biggest influence in Turtles was Raphael and his interactions. His one of his scenes alone with Splinter was kind of what had kind of changed me a little bit.
no, when he was
Um,
trying to indoctrinate him, or
no, when when I was younger, I struggled a lot with anger,
I
and
remember.
there was a time when in the movie when Raphael came home just after meeting Casey Jones, and he was angry because he lost a sigh, and then he got his butt kicked by Casey Jones, and then he couldn't find him to beat him up, and then he gets hit by himself in a taxi cab and all of that stuff, and he gets home and Splinter is waiting up for him. Everybody else is asleep,
Right,
but Splinter is sitting in his chair waiting for him to get home, and he makes him sit down to have a talk with him. And I can't even tell you what the situation was, that I had just recently gone through when I was watching this movie at a time that it made a big difference. Um, but but I was in a place where my anger had lost me something, and it had lost me something very very big. It doesn't seem like it now because like I'm sitting here going, well, I don't even remember what this was all about. But but I just happened to be watching Ninja Turtles
mm,
around this time, and when Splinter had him sit down, um, the I can almost quote it verbatim. I don't know if you want me to try doing the voice or if you want me to just quote it.
it's up to
Because
you, man. It's your show.
I don't know about my voice acting skills. But he said, I've tried to curb your anger, but more remains. Anger clouds the mind, and when you turn it inward, it's an unconquerable enemy. And you are unique because you choose to face it alone. But as you face it, don't forget them and don't forget me. And he wasn't telling him that he had to change. He wasn't telling him that he couldn't do it alone. He wasn't doing any of that. He was just telling him, "Hey, you don't have to. Like, I get that you struggle with some fire inside of you, but you don't have to fight it yourself, and you don't have to be alone when you do. We're here for you when you need us." So, like, and like I said, I had some pretty fiery anger issues, and after that, like, I mean, I still struggle with a little bit of anger sometimes, every now and again. But I mean, I am telling you right now that like it takes some serious injustice to get me to a point where I'm pissed
Where
off
you're
to
like,
to lose control. I mean, I think I've done it twice in the last 5 years. But it's, I mean, it takes a seriously large pile of bullshit. But because of that moment, it it caused me to stop and think to myself, you know, what resources around me am I not using?
Mhm.
You know, my family, my friends, who are the people that I have around me that can help me, you know, uh, uh that can help me channel this anger,
Right. That's a big
utilize it in a different way.
with what I found interesting is when you talked about anger that way. Um, it's it's interesting that that was, you know, one of the themes, because looking back on it, most movies that deal with emotions in that way have a similar thing about anger literally consuming. Like, I mean, Star Wars is a great example of that, because, you know, Darth Vader was like trying to get them to harness their anger and use it, and like the dark side's almost powered, not literally, but you know, the dark side's almost powered by anger, you know.
Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering.
You know,
Yep.
it's a great quote.
That yeah, that's the one they use. Uh Yoda, I think, in the first movie or in episode 1.
Yeah, but and what's funny about it is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, and other movies that have this similar message. It's one of the reasons why I actually see it as a red flag if people are like trying to get you to harness your anger and use it, you
Yes.
know? And like me, okay, it's one thing, like, so whenever I got pissed off because of the previous administration, we'll say, relationship wise, and
Right.
whenever I would get mad, I would go to the gym, and that, like, I train myself that, like, if you're mad, or if you can't stop thinking about it, or if you get depressed or whatever, go to the gym. I don't care if you just left the gym, go back to the gym. Just stand in the gym if you can, but I'll just go back. And like, that was one of the things that was one of the original driving factors in the weight loss, and it was better than crawling into a bottle and staying there the whole time.
Hmm.
And you know, it's one of those things that it's different, like acknowledging the emotion of the anger and then going and doing something productive as a response and getting rid of it, as opposed to allowing to myself to sit in a room and like brood over it or whatever, and you know, think
Hmm.
about all the things I want to do to so and so or whatever. But that now, like, coming out of that and then seeing the Ninja Turtles movies and their approach to that attitude, like, if I hear somebody and they say, you know, they're just like, yeah, I take my anger and I press it into a diamond and I use it, and I'm like, well, you're gonna kill yourself, not literally, but you're gonna end up like having an aneurysm or something, because you're just always so mad all the time. Like, it's exhausting, isn't it exhausting to be mad all the time? Like,
Very. Yes. Very.
it's almost like, fuck, I can't keep doing this. I gotta like calm down. Like,
I think I think I mean, and as far as that kind of stuff goes, I think I've found that, I mean, yeah, utilizing your anger is fine, but not as it exists,
like destructive, in a destructive way.
Yeah, like, I mean, well, like Splinter says in the movie that he tried to channel that anger. You channel it and transform it into something useful, like intention or drive or inspiration or whatever, something that you can use to make be in a place where you don't have to worry about that anger anymore. um I think is kind of the, I don't know, I think that's kind of the way that I take away from that. um but yeah, we're actually getting pretty close to the end here, uh on time wise. um so yeah, I guess what I'll do is I'll go ahead and cut that off here. But um like, dude, that's fun. Like, I don't know if you'd be interested in coming back for another one. Like, I mean, if we get any comments or anything about wanting another one about Ninja Turtles, maybe stepping up on that one again or something. But yeah, it's
Yeah, I'm fine
been,
doing. Yeah, I'd love to come back. Like, it's actually once I get the live working, I want to do a live version of this where we're both on in addition to this, and then I can use I can take the finished video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the finished video and I'm going to upload it onto my channel as
mhm,
like a, hey, I'm not doing this all the time, but here's a clip from the show or whatever. Like, might maybe do it at the end or something, and just be like, if you're interested, blah blah blah, go follow Ben, blah blah, whatever. I'll think of something to say at the time, but I
right,
get that little initial boost of traffic,
right.
and then yeah,
Let's
TikTok.
see.
If you need to know anything about TikTok, I've been all over it.
I can
Uh, so,
I can definitely stand to learn some stuff. I mean, I have one. I have all of those things. Which, I mean, you can find me on Facebook. The Facebook, I have links for TikTok and YouTube and I don't know. I think maybe even Instagram or something like that. I've got all of those on there. But as far as my stuff goes, like, I mean, if you've got any sort of a movie suggestions or a story of a movie that moved you or something like that, you can let me know on Facebook, or you can send an email to contact@movie-rx.com. And again, thanks, Chef, for for coming on the show. Um, yeah, go ahead and plug all your socials. Tell everybody where they can find you.
well, I'm in most everything is X8. It's X86, and that's on YouTube and TikTok. The other, I do have like an Instagram and stuff, but I'm trying to pretty much stay on YouTube and TikTok exclusively. So it's just, I mean, I don't know if you want to put up like a writing somewhere or whatever, but
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
probably have it in the show notes.
I do. I'm gonna do a little bit of like 86 on my TikTok is a less of the chefy stuff, and I do talk about some of it, but I also talk about soft skills. But then I also cover stuff like I did a video about Halo, for example. YouTube is
Oh, that's
pretty
cool.
much only soft skills. It's like leadership, communication, menu design, like that kind of stuff. So
That's cool. All right. Well, that's a wrap for today. Yeah, again, if you're interested in taking a look at any of that stuff on Jason's channels, check those out. And until then, I hope to see you at the next checkup.
thanks for having me.
See ya.